Cloud-Ready Programming in ABAP.
Mhm.
Before we start, let us introduce ourselves. So my name is Mehmet Hangisi. I've been working in SAP in ABAP for about I think 7 to 8 years. Started in ACC and lately, over the course of the years, been focusing on S4 HANA conversion projects, upgrade projects, and lately also in the public cloud.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Okay, good, Mehmet.
Yeah.
I'm Wim Verschueren. I've got about 2 decades of ABAP experience in SAP, mostly on ECC, but lately more exploring and applying the cloud-ready principles on an S4 system.
All
So,
right.
okay, let's get
Great.
things started, Mehmet.
Okay, so let's then first make this clear. Everybody should be muted aside from us, so I hope you guys can hear us. This session will be recorded. You can chat with us, and if there are questions, they are of course welcome. But do note that at the end of the session, there will be 5 minutes, some time for Q&A. All right, so shoot ahead whenever you feel like it. Um, Okay, so what is on the agenda the next 30 to 40 minutes? First of all, we'll be talking about why develop cloud ready and what that means exactly. We'll go through a couple of concepts, what we understand when we're talking about cloud ready programming, what it means. And then the second part will be a real life based example, a simplified version of something.
Yeah, it's inspired on
Yeah, inspired,
yeah.
but it is actually real life based, just to highlight that. And now we'll wrap up with if you yourself or your development team is interested in starting developing cloud ready, well, how you can go about that. First of all, okay, one of the main drivers for us was why should we start looking into developing cloud ready is, well, first of all, SAP has been mentioning it for a while now that they recommend using the cloud compliant code base in ABAP starting from S4HANA 2022. So 2022 or more recent, of course. Aside from that, we as developers are very interested in the newest innovations and such. We want to try the new stuff, and SAP has already also communicated that they will mainly focus their innovations on the ABAP stack in the cloud. So that's an added reason. Do note that today we will be focusing on extensibility on stack, so meaning developer extensibility and key user extensibility. We're not going to focus or mention even side-by-side extensibility. All right, so let's dive into the second part of the presentation, the real-life based example. So basically, to give a very simple summary of what the requirement was of the customer, their accounting department needed to be able to, when they are posting a journal entry, to populate a field called clearing date, just to make sure this clearing date does not exist or did not exist in the object journal entry, right? So the first step was, okay, for someone functional, a functional colleague, to go ahead, analyze the issue, discuss with the business whether there was maybe a way to solve this issue using the fit to sub standard approach. Unfortunately, in this case, that was not possible.
Yep.
So he came back, discussed it with us, but even after pushback from the developers, this was still a requirement that was really necessary. So we went ahead with our development. Of course, the first thing that we needed to do was add this custom field that does not yet exist on the object journal entry. And how do we do that, or how did we do that? Well, one of the first things we did was use a specific transaction. Let me just navigate to Eclipse ADT. So this transaction, scfd underscore registry. Let me just execute that real quickly, and then there we go. So this transaction basically gives a nice overview of the different extensibility options that are available for a specific business context. Now, in our business context, it was relating to the journal entry business context. So let me just have a look here for a business context with specifically journal entry in the name. Let's click here, star journal entry star. Let me just enter that. So the first hit, okay, we have found something for journal entry items, but it's referring to group reporting. So that's not what we really need. No, we need it for the accounting department. So if I just keep on looking, let's have a look here. Something else, but also not very relevant, verification and general ledger. Let's try a third time. Okay, here we are. This is what we needed, right? So we have two hits, the accounting journal entry and the accounting journal entry item. Now, our colleague has mentioned that, well, it's specifically necessary for journal entry items. So this is the business object that we are interested in. If I double click on this line here, I'll navigate to a view. There's lots of information here. So forget about most of it, just focus on this part that is the most important one, is the fact that there's a mention of a contract C0, and then between the brackets indeed, it's mentioned you can add custom fields via key user uh, apps. That means, so good news, we can extend our business object using key user extensibility apps. Let's do that. Yeah, for that we'll have to navigate to the Fiori Launchpad. Let me just, I think it was this one here. So it's already opened up. The specific app that we need is the custom fields. So let me just open that, right? All right. And if you want to create a new field or add a new field to a specific business object,
business context.
Business context, sorry, indeed. You'll have to you have to click on this the plus button here, create. You'll have to look for the business context. In our case, that was something with journal entry. I forgot the exact name. Let's have a look here. It's retrieving it. Okay, so we have a number of hits, and it's the last one here, accounting journal entry item. So let me click on that. And if I now want to create the field, I'll have to give enter a label. So clearing date. Everything is being automatically filled in for us. Very good. And then you also select a type. Of course, it's a date, so I will select a date in this case. And I won't click on create. Normally you would. Why won't I do that? Because we have already, in preparation for this seminar or webinar, sorry, we've already created the field. That's also the reason why another message is mentioned here. So let me just cancel that. Let me clearing. There you go. So here it is. Boom has already created this object. Why? Because when you try to publish it, when you try to create it, lots of objects are being adjusted and it takes quite some time. But as you can see, it has been executed. So it exists, it has been published. So that means if we would look for it, we should find it. Let me just navigate back to Eclipse ADT. Let me close the transaction. It's no longer relevant. Let me navigate to the database table Actoka, since that is the universal journal entry that is very interesting for us. If I click on it here and navigate to the ABAP element info view, let me click again, it will load all of the elements, so all of the fields in the database table. And if I go way back here, down, I mean, you'll see that the clearing date field has been added. So good news, great, the app works as intended. Let me just have a quick look for the data element, because every custom field that you create is also generating a data element. And let me do a where used here. Control up. There you go. So below you can see that apparently with that one action in the custom fields app, we have generated changes in over 200 objects, 204 to be exact. And you can clearly see there are many structures here. And very important or very interesting for us, and it will hopefully be apparent, is this structure and this one. So let me just go back to the slide deck, and then Wim has something to say.
Let me take over for a bit. Yeah. So, okay, we found out, or we got to know from our functional colleague that the BAPI, which they always use to post a journal entry, is the BAPI account document post. So, okay, we want to use that, but we need to fill in an additional field. So we explored this BAPI a bit, and we found out that there is standard S4 functionality in that BAPI. Namely, if you have the extension 2 parameter on that BAPI, if you pass a structure to it in the format of the S4X data to which the field was added by the custom fields app, then automatically the BAPI will take care that it's being mapped using a standard class, the CLCFD mapping class, which you notice in the middle block, that it will map it to the ACID structure, which at the end results in being that the field is added, filled in the ACDOCA table. So that's what we need. We need to fill the extension to
Wow,
parameter.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that, Wim.
My pleasure.
All right, so we'll continue then. So what we just what we do, just like Wim said, we checked for the requirements, fit to standard. Now possible, we added the custom field that was necessary. Now we're at a point where we want to post a journal entry and sorry, populate the custom field that we just created using the custom fields app. So let me navigate back to Eclipse. Let me just close both of these views here. Let me navigate to Codebase here, this class that we created. Let me just make it a little bit bigger here. So what you see here is basically an object that is not very cloud compliant yet. What we are doing here is there's a method called post, and there you can see that there's some logic. We have logic to check for some duplicates, and what that does is basically it just reads data from Actoka. We have also some logic to execute the mapping, which Wim was explaining earlier. And then there's also the call, the function module, the BAPI, as a document post, to actually post the journal entry, of course.
Yeah.
If that is...
And passing it to extension to
yes,
the
very,
the
very
edition.
important indeed.
Yeah.
So which contains, let me just show you guys, the...
yeah, that's the generic
that's
table.
the general... yeah, sorry. So
no problem. It's
we're getting excited presenting for you. So let me just continue with the presentation. So and if the BAPI the post is successful, there will be well, commit. Otherwise, there will be an exception raised. Now, what we will also do is, and we have already run that for those of you who are paying attention, I will now run an ATC check. Why will I run an ATC check? This code base, as I said at the beginning when I was showing it, is not yet cloud compliant. It has been implemented in a way that is more well, SSA or S4HANA without a focus on the cloud-ready programming mindset. So let me run the ATC check. I do it like this. I click anywhere in the code base of the class, right-click on it, click on Run As, go to ABAP Test Cockpit with, and then I select the ABAP Cloud Readiness variant, click on OK. What this will do is the ATC check will now run in the background, and it will highlight all the issues there are in the code, issues referring to, well, the non-cloud compliant part of the code. So what you can see here is that there are red bars on the screen. You saw it earlier as well, because we forgot to remove them during our prep. But in any case, what you see here on the screen is those red bars that you saw and are seeing now. They are added there because of the ATC check. The ATC check has run and has seen that there are about 15 errors for this code base of about 140 lines, so not that much. Let's just go over a couple of these issues together, just so you have a better idea of what it means, what the issues are flagged by the ATC check. Let's select the first one here. If I double click on it, it will automatically jump to the code base which has been flagged as an issue by the ATC check. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. So as you can see, what is happening here is we are just reading data from the database Actoka. But apparently, if you look at the details part of the ATC hit, the issue is that the usage of API that will not be released. So apparently, we're using an API, in this case Actoka, that will not be released. We cannot use Actoka, basically. So we have to find another way to read data from Actoka indirectly then. Let me just navigate to the next issue, which is this one here. What is the problem here? Again, usage of non-released API, apparently. And in this case, the ATC check is referring to the table type ACC BAPI S4X. So even table types are APIs, and in this case, they are not released. Let me just have another look.
May I add that also data elements, for example, should also be released before you can use them in cloud.
Exactly. Indeed, that's true. Yeah, it's also something to note. So even data elements can be an issue. Again, here, that's another example of a table type, which is, again, not released and should not be used. I will just navigate to this one because this is very interesting, the fact that the function module cannot be used. Let me have a look here. Where is the function module? Here you go. So the details in which I was interested is the fact that this BAPI that we are using to post a journal entry, well, according to the ATC check, it's not a released API, and in fact, it's also mentioning that the API will not be released. But the good thing is, in this case, apparently there is a replacement for it, as they mention here, behavior definition journal entry TP. So that's good news. We need to swap it. So what you have seen here is, again, 15 issues that we need to fix before we can say that this code is cloud compliant, right?
Yeah.
Now, let me quickly navigate back to the slide deck here. So we would like to get our code base cloud ready, right? So, and you've already, for those of you who are paying attention to detail, you've noticed that I mentioned the word API often. And basically, that is a very important concept in cloud-ready developing. You have to use or try to use as much as possible only released APIs. So we'll go into detail what a released API is. Important to note is that it exists out of two blocks. So you have a released API. It has release contracts. We'll go into that in a second. And there's also an ABAP language version. Wim will tell you more about that in a few slides over. So let's dive back into our Eclipse ADT, and I'll show you what I mean when I'm talking about released APIs. So let me just close this one here. Let me open the table Doka again. All right, so I've opened the object, any object. In this case, I have opened the database table Doka. If I navigate to the Properties tab, API state, I can see a bunch of information. So this is the information in which we are interested. But I think it will be easier if I explain the concept using a successor object, journal entry item, instead of Doka. Again, properties, API state. I'll just make it a little bit bigger. Oops. There we go. So let's go over the contracts one by one and what that means, right? So for this journal entry item, which has, let's say, three important parts: contract C0, contract C1, contract C2, and each of these refer to specific functionality. What I want to highlight here, C0 is basically referring to whether or not this object can be extended. So very important, whether it can be extended. Can we add a field to it, for example, extend it in that way? Or the second one, contract C1, refers to the fact whether or not this object can be used in ABAP code, also very important. And the last one, C2 here, refers to the fact that this object is exposed as an external service or not. So, for example, an OData service. And as you can see, in all of these parts, it mentions whether it's released or not. You can see clearly for C2, no contract has been set. It also means that it is not released yet, right? So if I zoom in the C0 part, the C0 contract, you can see not only is it mentioning whether or not this object has been released, but there is also a mention to the usage of this object. In cloud development, no. In key user extensibility, yes. What does this mean? You can extend this object, adding a custom field, for example, but you can only do it using key user extensibility apps. So not using code, ABAP based. So in Eclipse ADT, you will not be able to extend this object. Now the second part, the contract C1, again, it's released. This object has been released, meaning you can use it in your ABAP code. And if we have a look again, whether it's in cloud development or in key user extensibility apps, so both, whether you're writing code in Eclipse ADT or you're writing code using key user extensibility apps, this object is available for usage in that code. Okay, important to note. So the last part of the APIs, before I hand the presentation over to Wim, is the fact I've shown you how to look or consult the API state of an object in Eclipse ADT. You can also do that in a website, the SAP Business Accelerator. So it's a very handy website which you will be very intimately familiar with as soon as you start working with APIs. So let's have a look. Under products, we'll select the private cloud edition, and let's navigate to the business behavior definition that we are supposed to use instead of the BAPI. So that is on the on-stack extensibility, business object interfaces, and I will here journal entry star enter. Yes, we have a hit. I'll click on it, and this is the same object as flagged or mentioned by the ATC check, in the details part of it. There's also some information about the object, what you can exactly do, such as posting, reversing, validating, and such. All right, then I'll hand it over to Wim.
Okay, thanks, Mehmet.
There you go.
So thanks, Mehmet, for pointing out some cloud-ready principles, also showing us for what not cloud-ready programming is with the ATC check, and finding out already that there is a released API that we can use to fulfill our business case. So now I'm going to make it a bit more concrete. I'm going to dive into the business object, which Mehmet found, to see how we can use it. Well, apparently, the object found is not a business object, but a business object interface, which is released. So we can use it. It has some methods like shown in the api.sap.com website. But inside of that object, you will be able to find that there is a business object used, which is a RAP object, a RESTful Application Programming Model object. And inside that object, you've got the handler class, which contains the actual code. But okay, before I go on, I go to Eclipse, and I want to point out that, let me go back to the normal view and close all. That there is a way, for instance, if you don't know api.sap.com, or if you are really busy in Eclipse and you don't want to go out of Eclipse and you want to find back if there is a released object available that you can use, well, there is a neat trick for that available. So you can add a tree to your Eclipse, an ABAP repository tree, and there is one available called released objects. Okay, I want a tree released objects, but I want it to be grouped by application component. So indeed, that's easier to find back. So I give it a name, and then I start adding the tree. It takes a bit of time because it's building the tree, building the index. So the first time, of course, this takes a bit longer than
it doesn't take that much time.
Indeed. So here you see some categories in that tree. And the one which we are interested in is the use in cloud development. As you can notice, there are about 14,000 objects that we can use. Of course, I don't want to scroll through all those. That's why I group by application component, because I know journal entry is related to accounting. I dive into this accounting part. Okay, what is available? There are some core data services available, some behavior definitions, and oh, yeah, indeed, the business object, which Mehmet found back in api.sap.com, you can also find it back over here in Eclipse. You see that there's an action, post action available, so that's what we need. Of course, there's more information available than just this. You can click on Open Documentation, and there you can find back, for instance, for the post action, an example, explanation about the parameters, and so on. So that's fine. Now, let me quickly go back to the slide again. So if you remember, I noted down that the class which we are interested in, which we found back by navigating into that object, is the business definition handlers. That's where the business logic of that business object interface, which we are going to use, is part of. Let's have a look at this class. So I jump to this class. It's here in my favorites, but of course, normally it's not in your favorites, so you can use the open development object prompt, and then you can find the same class over there by prompting. Okay, this class is available. If we have a look at the outline of the class, you will see that there is a post method. If I click on it, you jump to the post method in that class. And let's have a quick look. And what do we see? Well, actually, the business object is using the BAPI, which we earlier tried to use ourselves as part of our first attempt. So in fact, the released object is a wrapper around this BAPI. Okay, but our use case was we do not want to only post a journal entry, we want to pass an additional field to it, which is not available in the standard. So for this, I have put a bookmark in that BAPI to point out that there is functionality available automatically in the BAPI, which maps everything which is passed to extension 2 in the right format to the right table, eventually ending into AC-Doka. Let me jump back to the business object where the BAPI call is situated. Well, what do we notice here is that the extension 2 parameter is not called by this business object. So that's a pity because we have got a BAPI, we've got a business object, we've got a BAPI that handles additional fields, but the business object itself isn't. So we're a bit stuck and we can't use this for our business case. Luckily, let's go back to the presentation. There is a solution for this. Let me first introduce you to the concept of tiers. So everything you build yourself in a cloud-ready way, you have to build in the ABAP Cloud tier, which means, which I will show later on, that's related to your packages. So there is tier 1. Everything which you develop over there can only use released sub-development objects. There's no way to call a non-released sub-development object like the BAPI from that tier. Now, SAP noticed that, okay, we've got some released objects, but we've got a ton of more non-released objects, and some customers really need them. So they introduced a second tier, tier 2, to customers. And what is this tier 2? Well, it's a tier which they allow you to create your own wrappers in. So you can build a wrapper in that tier. It's in standard ABAP. It's not in the cloud cloud language, but in the standard ABAP language. You build a wrapper, and then you have to release that wrapper. Once that wrapper is released, you can start using it from your ABAP Cloud packages. So the wrapper is a wrapper around a non-released sub-development object. Now let's zoom a bit into this wrapper. What does it consist of? Well, in fact, this wrapper should consist of a wrapper interface. It's a release thing. And what does this wrapper interface contain? Well, it contains a method definition around the BAPI, the API you want to call. So it has the same parameters as the BAPI. And you also need a wrapper class. That's the class which implements the interface, meaning it has all the same methods which are part of the interface in the class, but then with logic into it. This wrapper class calls the actual BAPI, the non-released API. And finally, there is a factory generated or needed for you to be able to instantiate the wrapper in your code. Now, these things, the two things that are released are the interface and the factory. The class itself should not be released. Good. Let me show you this in Eclipse, in ABAP development tools. So let's go back. Before I start diving into this wrapper and how we generate it, I want to introduce you to the package concept. So first, let me show you a package, Cloud-Ready, which we created. And I want to bring your attention on this ABAP language version over here. That's the ABAP for Cloud Development Language. That means that everything you develop inside that package needs to be cloud ready. You can't activate your code if it's not cloud ready. It will give you syntax errors. The purpose is if you build new things, to build as much as possible inside that package. Of course, sometimes you can't do something cloud ready, and then you still have your classic API packages available. with a standard ABAP development language. Good, because the wrappers are not cloud ready themselves, they need to be generated in such a standard ABAP package. Okay, now how did we create this wrapper? Well, actually, you can create them manually, but that's quite some work. So SAP, Andre Fischer in this case, provided a program which you can download from GitHub and upload with ABAP Git to your system. You can use it to define for which BAPI or API you can run it. You define a package, a standard ABAP package, not a cloud package, in which the wrapper will generate its components, and you define some names. Okay, now let's have a look at the result, because I already already did this on front. So let's first have a look at the interface. You will notice that it contains quite a lot of types. What does it mean? Well, for each BAPI data element, structure, and so on, which is not released, it will generate a local type in the interface so that you will be able to use that type instead of the standard type. If a data element is released, it doesn't have to have its own, it can just use that. Then it doesn't have a local type for it. Now, secondly, next to the types, if we scroll down, you will notice that there is also a method generated for us, a method called the same as the BAPI, which we want to call, and which has all the same parameters, but then using the local types of the interface. This wrapper interface is generated, but you can add things to it, like a method to call the mapping class, which itself is also not released, but I'm not going to dive into detail over there. There's the wrapper class available, which is also generated. In fact, it contains this interface, and it has the BAPI inclusive, our extension to parameter. So that's what we need. And let me show you. This class itself is not released, but the interface itself, if you have a look at the API state of the interface, you see that it's released for cloud development.
C1, so use ABAP code.
Yeah, so we can in Eclipse now in an ABAP cloud package use this interface, and also factory. Good, so the wrapper is generated, and now we want to use it. How do we use it? Let's jump to the Cloud-Ready package. And then we prepare the class in the Cloud-Ready, so it can't contain any code which is not Cloud-Ready.
Meaning only using released APIs again. Huh?
Yeah, indeed. It has in fact the same structure as the example Mehmet showed. There's a post method, a check duplicate method, and so on. So the same structure, it has the same functionality. But let's dive into some differences. Like for instance, the post method. Instead of using a type which is not released, it uses the type which is part of your interface. So released, you can use it. Then a second difference is the duplicate check. Instead of using a select on the Acidoka, we use a released CDS. And finally, we go back to using the wrapper. So let's point out that we have defined an attribute, a wrapper attribute of the interface. When our object is created, we instantiate that using the factory, and we can then start using it, for instance, to call the BAPI wrapper method instead of calling the BAPI itself, which is not released. So that's it. We've got functionality which allows us now to do the same as you did, but without any ATC errors, without really being cloud ready. So let's recap a bit. What did we do? First challenge the business. Can we do it different? No. Okay, we need to add a customer field using key user using customer fields app. Then we checked, okay, is there an API available to be used? Yes, there is one, but it's not usable. So we create a wrapper for the non-released API and use that in the ABAP cloud. So now that he showed you the ABAP Cloud way, I'm going to give back the word to Mehmet
Thank
so
you,
that
Wim.
he can get you started on this road.
Yeah, so I see that we're well, not over time, but we're nearing our time, I guess. So this last part, I'll run through it together with you guys, or jog through it instead of walking nicely, the brisk pace. So the third part, developing cloud ready, starting today. What would that mean for you, right? First of all, let's highlight the benefits again, or if we didn't do that explicitly enough during the presentation, we'll do it now. First part is the fact that if you use released APIs, if you work on a cloud-ready programming way, this means that, or it should mean that in the future, upgrades will require less effort. Yeah, you will be less inclined to do repairs, modifications. You use released APIs, your upgrades will be smoother. There's also a second upgrade. The fact is that released APIs are stable, so meaning they will also continue working in the future. If you have built apps, whatever, using released APIs, they should be future-proof as well. A third very important one, which I did state at the beginning of this presentation, is the fact that all of the innovations in the ABAP stack is being focused in ABAP Cloud. So if you want to be able to enjoy the benefits of those innovations, you'll have to be able to implement them also, of course, in a cloud-ready programming base. And the last one is, of course, if you are cloud-ready programming, then you'll also work in clean core. So also a very big deal with lots of benefits as well there. So if you're wondering, your company, your team, where to start, well, you should focus on these three concepts. The first one is key user extensibility, very important. What is it? How can you use it? When should you use it?
Like the customer fields app.
Like the customer fields app. Core data services, you should understand what CDSs are, how to create them, how to change them, how to extend them. And also, of course, the RAP programming model, very important. It's also something you should gain insight into. And if you're interested in more side-by-side extensibility, you can have a look at the other concepts here listed in gray on the slide. Joe, just to note, this is not something moving from an SSA or non-cloud programming mindset to a cloud programming mindset will take time. It's a journey you'll have to explore, and it's not something that will happen from one day to the next. So it will require some efforts, but there are, of course, great advantages.
Yeah, the message is not to wait too long. If you're on a right release, start exploring and gain experience by doing it.
Indeed. So also important to note, okay, so we're talking about cloud-ready programming, but basically we're also talking about cloud-ready as possible. So as much as possible as are there released APIs on your S4HANA version? If that's not the case, then it will be very difficult for you. But if they are, make use of them. If they aren't, create wrappers. If try to use as much as possible the ABAP Cloud language and extensions. But important, be pragmatic. If you have to basically rebuild the function module using wrappers, the module, sorry, in which you're active, then maybe it is not the best focus. So slice and dice. All right, before we move to our Q&A part, we want to highlight the fact that there are some upcoming events, AI and SAP. If you're interested, if you know someone who's interested, you can navigate or refer them to the website here below and register for those events.
Yeah, they're free to register. So
go and join them. All right, so if there are questions, we'll answer them.
I think that I can see them putting in. So there's a question, if we do a brownfield migration, do we have to review our own coding using those released API?
Yeah, well, if you're planning on moving your old code based, well, brownfield migration to where? To the, you want to take your code to public cloud, or you're just going on or you're doing an upgrade? So that's not clear, but if you're doing an upgrade, you don't have to. You can do that. That would be added benefit basically for your migration, because then you would have to run the ATC check, and if there are any released APIs which are then available on the new version, you'll have to use that. But you don't have to, in the sense that it will keep on working. But if you're going to the public cloud, for example, then you basically need to, maybe I shouldn't, it would mean that you would need to start from scratch. It's very unlikely that whatever you have built will work.
A big system which now exists moving into public cloud has a huge impact. If you move from an ECC system to an S4 brownfield, I think scanning with ATC to know, okay, how cloud-ready is my code, but mainly first adapt to be compatible with S4 and start doing the new things in the cloud-ready way. And maybe when something is refactored, an application is refactored, maybe at that time check if you can make some parts cloud-ready compatible. But just changing everything to cloud-ready compatible is not that realistic.
No, indeed, it's also maybe not necessary. I mean, highly likely depends on the use case. So let me just scroll up. Okay. Try F2. Yeah, that's right. But me personally, I like the element info to be there. It's indeed a good remark. So, okay, I see some questions.
As of which release it's advised to start working in a cloud-ready way. It's I think 2022 is a version which already contains quite a lot of released APIs, and SAP themselves indicate that this is a good release to start working that way.
So starting from 2022, moving to the more recent ones. Okay. Let's have another one. Is cloud-ready development more time intensive? I think. What do you think, Wim?
That's true. Certainly, if you don't have that much experience with it, you will need more time to explore the cloud-ready way of working. So it's more intensive. Of course, the more you do it, the less overhead you will get. But it will always be a bit of overhead. You don't just dive in and say, "Oh, here is this BAPI, I use it." No, you have to explore a bit. But on long term, it will pay back because with upgrades and so on, you will have less work and you will be compatible with the more new things.
True indeed. So here we have another question. What do you recommend for learning ABAP Cloud? We already alluded to that in the you had those three things, the three concepts that we mentioned. So key user extensibility, understanding CDS views, how to build them, what they are, when to use them, and RAP, very, very important. Of course, also Eclipse ADT as a IDE is also very important because all of your development will happen there. If you're looking for those released APIs, you can use the tree or you can navigate to the website as mentioned.
It doesn't mean that you can't use the ABAP workbench anymore. That's you can still use the 80 and so on. That's if you are a bit if you didn't use ADT yet and mainly know AZ80, you don't have to switch immediately. But know that if you want to build, for instance, a CDS or look at a wrap object and so on, for those things you need to get to learn Eclipse. So it's good to already get to know Eclipse, maybe with the development objects you are accustomed to. So try it out and play with it.
Yeah, exactly. Do we have Okay, so there's also a question, which IDE should we use for ABAP Cloud? Well, you should use Eclipse ADT because as mentioned as well, there are lots of benefits as opposed to the workbench. Okay, let me scroll.
There's another question. Is it possible to let SAP release an unreleased API? Okay. So there's a BAPI. You don't want to create a wrapper for it. You just want to use the non-released BAPI. Yes, you can. There's a website, the Customer Initiative website of SAP, where you can propose a change, propose to release a BAPI or to do some changes. And it might be picked up by SAP.
Might be.
If there are enough votes and so on. And but important to notice that those approved customer initiatives are first developed on public cloud and not necessarily on the private cloud. So if you need to have it on a private cloud, then you need to take it further and ask SAP explicitly to also downport it to the private cloud.
Can we switch off those cloud-ready checks in ATC in a first? So okay, so there is another question. Can we switch off those cloud-ready checks in ATC in the first phase? Yeah, you can. Huh? So basically, you determine whatever your ATC check. You determine which checks you run there. You have those the ones that Wim was referring to. For example, the S4 HANA compliant ones. If you're migrating from or upgrading, converting from SCC to S4 HANA, I don't know, 2023, for example, then you will have to run the ATC checks for the compliance, the data model changes and all that stuff. And then if you're so inclined, you could also execute the ATC checks for the released APIs, the ABAP Cloud readiness that we showed earlier.
And you can build your own ABAP Cloud variant if you want, where you really pick out this check needs to happen, this check, and so on. So you can, be in total control over there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking, I don't see any other question. So I think we're through.
Yeah.
Okay, this one indeed. Well, yeah, I'll also give this one, I think, to Wim.
Okay, let me first have a look. So if we do a brownfield migration, do we have to?
No, it's this one. How can I consume classes in a cloud-ready way?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the API generator, the API generator, which we showed, is only available for function modules, not for classes. But that doesn't mean that you can't create your own wrapper. So you can create your own wrapper, but instead of calling a BAPI, call a class.
Yeah, it will be more manual work.
In second instance, I think this question is intended for as another meaning. I think if they mean if I have a class like we created, how can I use it? Because, for instance, creating an ABAP report or program is no longer allowed if you work in the cloud-ready way. So what are the options there to use a class? I hope that that's the purpose of the question. In that case, the main target is to create wrap applications instead. So instead of a report, you create a wrap application and there call the class. But there are other ways to call the class. You can call the class as part of an application job, which is the successor of batch jobs. At the SM37 successor, but now you use a Fiori app to define an application job. Or, for instance, you can call a class starting from an event mesh event, which comes in and you handle it.
So basically, the question is, yes, you can call them in a cloud-ready way, but you cannot call them in a report, since that's no longer allowed in the cloud, basically. All right. I guess we would like to thank everyone for your attention and the questions you've asked, and we hope to see you again in the future.
Yep. Thanks all for attending.
Bye.
Have a nice day.